Is it a buyer's or a seller's market? I guess that depends on where the market is and how you define buyer and seller's market. Historically, we used to say if there was 6 months of inventory or less, it was prone to be a seller's market. And if there was 6 months of inventory or more, it was going to be a buyer's market. But that has evolved. And more recently, we redefined that to say if the standing inventory, if there's 0 to 4 months of inventory, that's a seller's market. And if there's 4 to 6 months, that's a neutral market. And if there's 6 months or more, that's a straight buyer's market. But so how we judge that is being argued. And the reason why is we definitely feel the tide's changing. We definitely feel the tide changing from a straight seller's market going back to 2020, 2021, 2022, and even into 2023, straight out seller's market in every market, to that being kind of shifting by geographic location, by state is shifting. And we got to, in many places, a neutral, but now in most places, we're in a buyer's market. And there's a ton of articles on this. I know you've seen them. I'm going to touch on a couple of them today. More specifically, I'm going to touch on an article by Resi Club. By the way, I love Resi Club. If you're in mortgage or real estate, you really need to subscribe to Lance Lambert's work. He gives great stuff. But he was analyzing Zillow's market heat index. And he had some issues with it, but Zillow's market heat index tries to determine if it's a buyer's market, seller's market, or neutral market. And here's what they used in their heat index. And by the way, I did a LinkedIn post on this. I explained all of it. I give you links to all four of the references to Zillow, as well, two of them to Resi Club's material. But here's what Zillow uses in their heat index. One is user engagement on Zillow's listings. Two is share of listings with price cuts. And three is share of homes going pending with 21 days. So that's the inputs they take, and then they come out with a heat score. And if the score is 70 or more, then that's a strong seller's market. If it's 55 to 69, it's a seller's market. If the score is 45 to 55, it's a neutral market. If it's 28 to 44, it's a buyer's market. And if it's below 27, it's a strong buyer's market. And from that, they create a heat map showing you where they think buyers and sellers markets are. And in case you want to know what their conclusion is, the West Coast and Sunbelt markets are slowly cooling, and they're starting to be in the neutral phase, leaning towards a buyer-friendly condition. The Midwest and parts of the Northeast remain to be seller-friendly territory with low inventory and strong buyer competition. Of course, Austin was the pandemic era boomtown. Now it's the latest. It's one of the coldest markets in the country, as is many areas in Texas and Florida. They're leading the buyers markets, right? And then some of the strongest sellers markets are in Buffalo, New York, and Scranton, Pennsylvania are some of the strongest sellers markets. And you can go check out the heat map. I'm not going to show it to you. You can get it. But more interesting, even the next day, Lance came out with a follow-up article about buyers and sellers markets. And he essentially said is today there's 500,000 more home sellers than home buyers. And that just by definition makes it a home buyer's market. And for comparison, he said, look, if you go back to the peak of 2022, there was essentially 500,000 more home buyers than home sellers. And today, now there's 500,000 more home sellers than home buyers. So it's definitely switched. And in his article, he had a really nifty looking chart. Here it is. This chart shows the red is buyers, the blue is sellers. And so you can see here we have far more buyers during the pandemic. And today we have far more sellers. Really interesting chart. He also lists here, and this is using Redfin data. This is, he lists buyers markets. So you can see all these buyers markets starting with Miami. And then listed by the top buyers market, like the strongest buyers market. And then it goes into a balanced market starting in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Chicago, all these states. And then cities, and then it goes into a seller's market still in Baltimore, Providence, New Brunswick, Cleveland, and you get it. So this is a really interesting article. I will put a link to that article below. And you can, as I said, you can go to my LinkedIn site if you want to get to the heat map or get the 3 related articles to Zillow's heat index. You can go there. If you want to just check out Lance's from Resi Club's article on the Redfin data, you can get it below. With that, I hope you found this useful. The markets are definitely shifting. It's exciting. The shift is always healthy. So we're shifting towards a buyer's market. We're in a buyer's market in many, many, many markets. And certainly that is probably a good sign. I hope you got something out of this. I appreciate you giving me some of your time. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks so much.